Greetings, everybody. This is Christopher Messina coming at you from the Messy Time Studios, broadcasting as ever from the beautiful beaches of the last free state in America, Florida. Although that may no longer be true, there may no longer be a distinction. Joining me from the second to last or equally free state of Texas, David Blackmon, and
Yeah.
we are here to just have a chat. If we can get through the chortles, joy, and dancing with glee, that is a reaction to the recent election events. David, how are you?
I'm great, man. I haven't felt this giddy since Reagan banished Jimmy Carter in 1980. It's just wonderful.
Then it was good. And then his thorough, magical, fabulous trouncing of Mondale 4 years later was
Yeah.
just one of the greatest things in American history.
Oh my
Um,
God.
we're both in states where we're not hearing a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth in the darkness. But I gather from friends in New York, it's like one massive Shiva up there. So,
But I mean, even in New York State, what did he lose by 11% instead of 25, like
yeah,
Republicans
if you
always
took New
have
York
before?
City out, he would have won.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man.
So, what are your thoughts? I mean, I was fairly confident. I had a great chat with William Struck, the
Yeah.
author, right on November 1st. And we were kicking it around and trying, right, to be objective because not what we believe, it's what the world's going to do.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just don't see, if you take away the word Harris and the word Trump away, how could anyone vote for a continuation of these 4 years? Or that was
Yeah.
my take on this.
Me too. I felt very good about the prospects for this election. Really pretty good all along, but really since May.
Yeah.
It has appeared to me Trump was in a very strong position to win. There was a little blip in August, when they dumped Joe and replaced him with Harris, and the media went on I mean, really and truly, the most massive propaganda campaign in world history.
Yeah.
Just incredible focus propaganda day after day after day. And that, bumped her up a little bit. But once you saw that coming out of the Democratic convention, her bounce was 1 or 2%, maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
she's
The
just a horrible
definition of a dead
candidate.
cat bounce.
Right. Yeah, she was just such a horrible candidate. And I was really against Trump doing any debates with her because it just would give the
Yeah.
Democrats and the media another opportunity to kind of reset the race, which it did for about a week.
Yeah. Until
And
she spoke again.
right. But this was a change. Presidential cycles are either change elections or they're status quo elections.
Yeah.
You just look back through history, that's always the case. This was clearly a change election. There was one change agent in the race, and his name was Trump. And as long as he stopped making horrible, idiotic mistakes and just ran his campaign, he was going to win.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened after September 10th. I mean, he didn't
Yeah.
do any more debates. It was very smart. He ran a really smart campaign. And he just yesterday appointed his campaign manager, Pat Summerall's daughter, to be his White House chief of
I
staff.
didn't
And
know
I
that.
think,
I knew that she's very capable. I did not know that's
yeah,
who's that's funny. That's really funny.
yeah, she's
That's
she's
great.
apparently really, really strong. I mean,
Yep.
really strong. And so that's a great choice. She ran an incredibly smart campaign
Yep.
right down to the final day. And the other thing I think we should acknowledge is Charlie Kirk and oh my gosh, I'm going to forget the fellow's name in Pennsylvania. I think those voter turnout efforts, on the ground efforts in Arizona and Pennsylvania were really crucial. And and then the other thing to me that was decisive in this race was the choice of Michael Whatley and Laura Trump to run the Republican National Committee.
Yes.
And they hired that army of lawyers who fought all those proactive lawsuits
Yep.
to protect election integrity. After the 2020 farce,
That
you had this
craziness.
wild, crazy, discombobulated effort after that election. And it was too late after the election. You have to do
Yep.
all that proactively. And that was, I think, decisive. It
Yep.
just intimidated any real massive
Well,
election fraud efforts.
I would also say something which is important because the Democrats historically, I'll give them credit for this because they pull their ranks from liberal arts majors from smart colleges, which makes
Yeah.
them good at media manipulation. And so their cleverness in 2020 was because right, if you ask any kind of middle of the road person right now about, well, do you think the election was stolen in 2020? They answer rightly, what are you talking about? The Trump campaign filed 70 lawsuits that were all tossed out. Well, that's true, and that's cleverness on the part of the Democrats. What is also true is prior to election day, they changed all kinds of rules, like
Right.
mail in ballots. Once you counted them, you throw out the envelopes, right? So there was nothing to go challenge. And that nuance was thankfully learned by the Republicans this time. So they fixed that error beforehand.
Yeah.
Um, I watched just very quickly. I found first off, if I could bottle the tears of crying liberals like Jimmy Kimmel, I would season my martinis for a
Rachel
year.
Maddow. Yeah.
Oh God, that was the most beautiful,
Oh God.
beautiful thing ever. Um, the depth of Trump derangement syndrome with these people that he is this stormtrooper dictator.
Yeah.
I'm like, he was president for 4 years. What are you talking about? Anyway, the greatest thing is I don't have to make fun of them anymore because we won. But what
Right.
was right, like someone was poking me on Substack earlier today. It's like I don't care. We won. We had to have 12 years to fix the country. I don't care.
Yeah. I
Um,
hope we do. We're going to
I
need
think we
all
do.
12 of them.
Think we do. But we're gonna get a lot of it done immediately. But I watched Cackles give her concession speech, right? That was fascinating. Like, if I
Yeah.
literally hate to be like, oh, I came here from outer space. If I were from another country, I knew nothing about this, I landed here and I watched that 15 minutes, right? I first off wouldn't know what it was about. And
Yeah.
second off, if I had to guess, I would have said this young woman is a high school senior valedictorian, prom queen, who is also acting in the last musical of her high school career, and now she's going to Harvard in the fall. Right? There was no sense whatsoever for her that she cared,
Right.
that she cared that she lost. It
I
was
know.
fascinating to watch. Hey, I mean, I'm glad you came out. You were positive, wonderful, terrific. You conceded, right? The usual stuff about keep fighting. Okay, that's fine. But in her affect, there was no indication that she was sad that she lost.
No, I
It
think
was,
she was relieved.
I think she was relieved. Can you imagine? She was
Yeah.
unqualified for Senate, never mind VP. And this was way above her pay grade. So,
Yeah.
wow.
And so if she had won, she's clearly the next sock puppet for the deep
Yep.
state. I mean, that's what Joe Biden has been for 4 years, and that was the reason she was picked because
Yep.
she was willing to get up there and read whatever text was put in front of her by other people who really run the party and say all those things that she just memorized. And
Yep.
it's why she couldn't do the Joe Rogan podcast. And I
Right.
think that
Or
was
even the softball Brett Bear show, which they had to edit
right.
heavily.
Yeah, because she had memorized about 20 to 30 minutes worth of talking points, and she had literally no knowledge about any of the major issues in this campaign beyond those memorized talking points. So she barely got through what 35 minutes with Brett Baer, and
The
even
edited
then
version.
was a disaster.
Yeah.
So she just, I mean, you have to give them credit for golly, what are they going to get? They're going to get about 47%, I think, of the popular vote,
Which is amazing.
which
And I
is
think
incredible.
Trump derangement syndrome is similar to how many people hate Hillary, right? When
Yeah.
someone asked me about Hillary versus anyone, I said I would vote for, I don't know, a Wiccan goat raping mass murderer over Hillary. I think that's a better deal, right? So, and there are a lot of people that feel that
Yeah,
way
they
about
do
Trump,
less damage, probably.
right? They do less damage because they can only rape one goat at a time, where she can screw the whole country instantly. So there's that
Instant.
fun. But there are some people who just feel that way about Trump, and so I think if Vance had been at the top of the ticket, I think it would have been like Reagan Mondale. I think he would have taken 80% of the country
Yeah. Or
because,
DeSantis. I
yeah,
would,
DeSantis or
yeah,
Vance or anyone but Trump
yeah,
would
yeah.
have overwhelming supermajority. So, and that is just true. I mean, I'm glad Trump won. I think the team he's assembling around him, some of whom I know, are doing are going to do a great job. Learned a lot from the first attempt where he didn't understand the permanent bureaucracy would not work for him as they are constitutionally, legally, and contractually obliged to do, but would
Yeah.
details, but would fight him. So now the entire transition team is privately run, which is great. So the deep state must be like losing their
Yeah. Oh
minds
my
because they have
God.
no
Yeah.
ability to affect what's going to happen next. Um, I think this is a stunning opportunity to really to do two things. One, seriously right size the country. And someone wrote a really great book about how to do that, which I know that some of the folks on the team have read, which I'm really excited about. Um, so that's really excellent. I hopefully I can be a contributor to the advancement of America. And
Yeah.
then to truly and honestly over the next few years, take away the outsized fears and concerns of those who are against him. Because I know, especially a lot of young women, a lot of mothers, whether they voted for Trump or not, um, like it or not, Roe v. Wade choice is a
Oh yeah.
existential issue,
Absolutely.
and I think that's that's where I think the Republicans really need to go back to the formulation that kind of worked between moderates of both parties, which is no one likes it. It's not a great thing. Rare, safe, and legal, right? We don't want young
Right.
women shoving
Yeah, they've been
metal up
very
themselves,
stupid
right?
in several states overreaching
Yeah.
on that issue. Texas is one of them. I
Crazy.
mean, we've got
And
a law in Texas that doesn't even make exceptions for rape or incest.
crazy.
It's insane.
It's
And
insane.
Trump won Texas by 13% of the
Yep.
vote. He would have won by 20 if
Yep.
we had a reasonable
Yep.
abortion law.
And that is a
But we
state
don't.
by
And
state
that's,
issue
yeah,
that I argue is important to fix that division.
yeah.
Because if we fix that division and we remove that fear and we show the benefits of low taxes, constrained government, strong borders, like that's 12 years plus, right? And
Oh,
they'll
yeah,
people
it
look
could
back
be.
at the lefty lunacy, but so long as the left still has this cudgel of these barbarian men who hate women, we're never going to get more than 51%. And that I think is the
Right.
one thing we need to fix.
I do too. I totally agree with that. And it's especially compelling when you look at what's going to happen in the 2030 reapportionment, because what's going to happen is states like Texas and Florida and these other Sunbelt states are going to pick up about a dozen additional electoral votes,
Yep.
and they're all going to come out of the hides of blue states like California, Washington, New York, and Illinois. So you're
Yep.
going to have a net 24 electoral vote shift in favor of the red states. And that's going to be that's an opportunity for intelligent half of our society. I'm sorry, I shouldn't put it that way.
Right.
But the half of our society that isn't afflicted with Trump derangement syndrome
Yep.
to really continue a long-term major shift in how this country is governed and to rid our country of all this insanity,
Yep.
literal insanity,
Literal
all the
insanity.
woke that has inflicted our institutions over these past 4 years. I mean, it's just been stunning the rapidity with which DEI has become just run rampant in our educational institutions, in our bureaucracies, even in the Pentagon.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's threatening to really destroy the readiness of America's military, and that has to be reversed. It has to be a central focus point of this administration to root out all of these people who are pushing this Maoist Marxist ideology
Yep.
throughout our bureaucracies and summarily fire them. You can't tolerate keeping these people in these positions of power. You just can't. You just got to go in, root them out, cut them out of government with a scalpel, and somehow prevent them from ever coming back, because it's a fatal plague for our
Oh,
country if we
yeah.
allow it.
And
To-
it's what's so fascinating is it's kind of like every massive change where the last 4 years, as you say, this rapid eruption. But this has been brewing since the 1960s. This is deliberate. So
Yeah.
Bill Ayers, the
Yes.
Weather Underground, he happened to go to high school in Winnetka with a good friend of mine. So they knew each other, right? And for those who don't know, Bill Ayers, who was a terrorist who was on the run with, Bernadine Dorn, his wife, and their evil son, Chesa Boudin, became the DA in San Francisco. So the rot is deep and long. Um, if Bill had been one more middle class or poor kid, he'd still be rotting in prison to this day for bombing things. Daddy was a really rich insurance executive um, in Chicago and got him off. And his
Yeah.
last trial before he and his wife went on the run for 11 years, he told my friend Chris that the Marxist left in America had deliberately decided to model themselves on the Society of Jesus in the Catholic Church, meaning you want to change the country, you change the children. So they all went into education, high and low, combined with the draft dodger generation of Vietnam who didn't go to war and stayed and hid out and got PhDs that daddy paid for. All that confluence together, right? That has been my core contention that the worst decision this country ever made was allowing draft deferments based on education.
Yeah.
Because poor kids went to fight, rich kids hid. And not only did rich kids hide, but because the war went on for 10 years, if you got a bachelor's degree by 1968, 69, now your number's up. Jesus, you get rolled in a master's program. 2 more years. It's not over. Into a PhD program. And so we got a generation of men who failed to become men in an adult sense. And they hid in the universities and they've been pushing this crap ever since. So,
Yeah.
I've been raising hackles by saying, Joe McCarthy had a good idea, but he lacked follow through and commitment. So
Yes. No. And
now we got to have
that's
it.
really the fact of history is Joe McCarthy was largely right.
He was right. And he
Yeah.
stemmed the tide. Every European country has a communist party of some kind. There is none here, aside from a couple of jokers, right? But we've got to go back. And it's like, I don't know, salicylic acid on a wart. You got to go back and you got to do it again. Um,
Yeah.
and we got
No,
to
I
figure out
agree
a way to do
totally.
that because what normal people don't understand is, as Lenin said, we will hang the bourgeoisie with the ropes they sell to us.
And he
And
was
that's what
right.
they're doing. That's what
Yeah.
they're doing. Um,
No, that's absolutely right. And it's a really insidious thing and it's hard to root out. But if we're not going to do it this time, then we're never going to do it. And
Gotta do it.
there's so many. That's the problem that Trump and his people face is
Yep.
there there are so many high priority pressing things that simply must get done in
Yes.
this administration. Um, and the media is going to fight them every step of the way. And I think, they're going to have to just say, we don't care about the
No,
media
plow on.
because nobody
This is
believes them anyway.
time to act like Democrats. You get
Right.
power, you do what you want. The
Yeah.
Republicans have been too timid for 20 years,
Oh, at
right? Time
least.
to
Yeah.
just do it. Um, Reagan ran as a core plank of getting rid of the Federal Department of Education, which was 8 months old under Carter.
Yeah.
And just all he had to do was kill it, and he didn't. And
Yeah.
that metastasizing propaganda machine has done more damage in this country than almost anything else. That's got to go. Like day one,
Yes.
gone,
No,
out,
that's
you're
absolutely
fired,
should
go
be a top
away.
priority. Absolutely. I agree with that.
And
Hey,
the states and
it,
localities can choose education, which
yeah.
drives the left crazy because they want everyone to do what they want, right? But you know, it should be down to localities. It should be down to not even New York City. It should be down to the people in that district. And parents get the money, not the schools. And you've got your voucher chit, and you choose where to send your kid. It'll be amazing how swiftly schools become better quality. Because
Right.
like everything else in the world, I mean, it's the stupidest system ever. Tax dollars go to the school and the teachers union, who have no incentive to respond to parent concerns, none.
Yeah.
But if it's parents shopping, why are private schools so great? Because people pay for it. right? So I'm excited. What do you think of the biggest? I'm always harping on fixing the communist problem. What do you think of the biggest things that need to be addressed on day one?
Well, other than fixing the communist problems, you have to shut down the border,
Yeah,
re-implement all the executive orders that Biden withdrew, and shut it down and
yep,
secure it and build that wall, whatever it takes to reallocate funds from wherever he has to reallocate from, even if it's the Pentagon. You take the $5 billion you need and build that wall as fast as you can build it,
yep,
and make sure that there's no opportunity for another Democrat to come in and screw it all up. The other thing that they really need to work on, it may not be a day one priority, but when you look at the election map of this election, Kamala Harris did not win a single state that has a voter ID law in
right,
place. Not one.
right,
We need a national voter ID mandate, and I'm generally against the nationalization of our elections. The states run the
yep. States
elections.
are
I
supposed to run
believe
it.
that's
Yep,
how it should be in a federal system. But you just have to. We have to have election integrity,
yes,
and you don't even need necessarily a national voter ID law. You can just implement policies to withhold federal highway funds from any states who don't pass their own voter ID
that's right.
laws.
That's how the feds forced New Orleans to raise the drinking
Right,
age. They
right.
just said, "Fine, you want 18-year-olds to drink? You don't get highway funds."
Exactly. And
You're right.
and the same thing on, we still got California, Arizona, Nevada, and Pennsylvania farting around. Here we are 4 days after the election. California is going to keep counting votes for a month.
Right.
Okay. So there needs to be another policy at the federal government. You either get your votes counted by midnight local time on election day, or
Yep.
we're going to start withholding highway funds and whatever other funds go from the federal government to the state,
Yep.
and penalize states that continue to do this, because there's no reason for these lingering vote counts other
Right.
than Democrats creating opportunities for themselves to defraud elections. And
Yep.
that shit has got to stop.
Yes.
And the federal
Immediately.
government does have the power to influence that, and should.
What I'm this is the perennial optimist in me, which is why, only optimists become entrepreneurs because pessimists see problems and stop, right? Um, I think there's room for hopeful on this. I think there's room for rational persuasion. I would still rather prefer states to make these decisions for all those
Me
reasons.
too.
But because what after writing the book and podcasts, I'm out and talking a lot. People always ask me like, well, what would you do? So what I would do is I would make sure that everyone pays a modicum of attention. That's it. Take an hour out of your month. Stop playing fantasy football. Go to your local town hall council. Hear what the fuck they're doing and pay attention. Do you know who your congressional representative is? Like
Yeah. Most
they
people
the
don't.
political class thrives on people not paying attention.
Yeah.
They've managed to make everything simultaneously wildly boring and insanely complex. And that combination means that unless you're an obsessive maniac with time on his hands, you can't figure out what they're doing. And they love it that way.
Yeah.
But if you pay attention and you demand of them full transparency, what do you do? What are you voting on, right? I was having this chat yesterday with a mathematician. What I also think really has to change, longer term, but I think it would help, is if we went back to the same proportion of constituents to representatives that there were 100 years ago, right? We wouldn't have 435 members of Congress. We'd have 4,350 members of Congress,
Right.
which would be salutary in the sense that just like you trust the price of the New York Stock Exchange because that represents tens of millions of opinions about a price, so too you couldn't have Nancy Pelosi arm twisting the junior member from the third district in California to vote the way he shouldn't
Right.
because it's only
It'd be a lot harder for the
435.
minority
You
whip to do their
can't
job,
run.
though.
Yeah, you cannot do party politics with 4,000 congresspeople, right?
Yeah.
That would be the best thing ever because you're accountable to 80,000 people, which is a mid-sized town, city, right? Who could grab you on your front porch and go, Bob, what are you doing?
Right.
We would
No, I
get
totally agree with that. Yeah.
so
I
much
mean,
better legislation out of that system than we get now. And the senators go back to being appointed by governors because they're supposed to look after the interests of the state. They're not supposed to be super representatives voted by the people. We change that, we get a lot of improvement. But we got 12 years to get
yeah.
all that done.
I hope we do. It would be great to believe that, for that to happen. I don't know that I'll live that much longer, but we'll see. Um, I'd love to live long enough to see all that come about. We got 4 years for sure. We've
Yep.
got 2 years with a majorities in Congress, um, that we may not have after the midterm elections. Just
And it's time to
history
act like
says,
Democrats. Everything you want to
right,
get done, get it done.
right. And God help us if the Democrats do manage to steal a House majority in California and Arizona and Nevada, by rigging these, continuing to count votes for another
Yeah.
2 weeks. Because if that happens, then the first day in office, they're going to impeach Trump again. They'll just make up a reason like they
Right.
did twice during his first term. And I don't think the country can afford that. Um,
No, but I think
so
he'd also plow right through it and ignore it. I mean,
yeah,
that's that I had it's funny, I had this chat with a buddy that teaches constitutional law. And he didn't disagree because I was thinking about this one night because I'm a nerd, but and I'm annoyed by these idiots before the election. The advise and consent clause in the Constitution was written by gentlemen for gentlemen. It was not meant to be a block, right? The founders would be startled at the Kavanaugh circus or any of these hearings, right? That's not what that was meant to be. That was a collegial, gentlemanly nod
right.
towards, well, the Senate, which again was originally appointed by the states, elder statesmen, will be there to help the president
Yeah,
choose, right? So I would love if Trump would, on day one, say, "This is my cabinet," and have the media, say, "Oh, you mean your nominee?" Say, "No, this is my fucking cabinet." No, there's no process. No, this is it. You have a problem? Come and buy as a consent me, right? No, this is it. They're seated. They're doing it. We're going ahead. And if you'd like to challenge it, go ahead. But I think that setting that precedent would be perfect. I've nominated them. They're seated. If you can find a significant reason why one of them should not be here, you come bring it up and let's
yeah.
talk about it.
And I
I
think
think,
he's going to have them all selected by the end of this month, by the way.
oh
I
yeah,
think they have
yeah,
nominees in
get it
place.
all done.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know. I'm curious your thoughts. Like, not everyone in the Democrat Party hierarchy is a leftist ideologue lunatic, right? So where, or maybe they are.
God, I hope
Where
that's right. It's
I
kind
don't
of
know if that's
sometimes
true,
it's
but
hard to tell, but
where
I
are the
think that's
elder
right.
statesmen
Yeah.
who are like, if we try to jam 97 genders and Bobby was a 14th place swimmer, but now he's Jane and he robs gold medals from girls who worked their whole lives. Like, if we keep jamming this crap down the maw of the American people, we're going to lose. Like, where were those voices in the
Yeah.
party? Because clearly they did not prevail.
Yeah. They don't seem to really exist. You got people over there like Dick Durbin, but and Chuck Schumer, I mean, these are the
Oh,
people who are, quote, the elderly state or statesmen,
oh,
but they all just spent their time pandering to these woke lunatics that unfortunately continue to make up a bigger piece of the Democrat Party's base, but is not certainly nowhere near a majority of Democrats,
yeah, at
in the
all.
country. And so here they have an opportunity now to demonstrate that they can actually govern, in the interests of the country and not in the interest of these lunatic fringe people, who are the loudest screamers out on X and TikTok, right? I don't know if they're capable of doing that. I really honestly don't. I mean, when you look at the landscape, who are going to be their leading presidential candidates in 2028?
Yeah.
Gavin Newsom is the guy you keep hearing his name.
Right.
That guy's one of the most demented nut jobs
Awful.
in the history of this country. He's done more damage to
Yep.
a formerly great state than any single person in its history. And to think that he's going to be the presidential nominee for one of our major parties is just almost beyond comprehension. So I wish I would like to believe there's some elder statesmen in the Democratic Party who are capable of, behaving in a rational manner. They haven't demonstrated
Crazy
that.
adjective. Yeah. If you know what I find hilarious about California or sad is if California had the physical reality of Kansas, there'd be 40 people left there. Problem with
Right.
California is it's beautiful, right? I mean, I've done
It's
a lot of work
gorgeous.
in the
It's such a
valley,
beautiful
and
place.
every time I'm out in San Francisco, within 2 days of the eucalyptus and the views and the trolley
Yeah.
cars and the food and the bay, and I'm like, socialized medicine could work. Wait, no, wait, don't stop.
Right. Yeah. No, anytime
Yeah, no.
somebody asks me about why anyone would want to live in California, I just say, look, go spend a weekend in Santa Barbara sometime
Oh,
and just
fabulous.
look at
Yeah.
the countryside.
Oh, it's
It's just an
gorgeous.
incredibly gorgeous place.
I used to go sailing out of Sausalito all the time, and there's nothing more phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. You're out floating
Napa Valley.
around.
Yeah.
Up in Marin County. I get up in Napa. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
beautiful place. And then all the way down, it's mind-boggling that otherwise rational people let this madness happen. I mean, it's not all
Yeah.
left-wing nutcases. The Central Valley is, a breadbasket of America.
Yeah.
There are hard-working industries like oil industries out there. How?
It's a lot like Texas out there, and in that air,
Yeah,
Bakersfield, Fresno, it's really a lot like the Permian Basin out there.
yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And I go back to the experiment only works if people get engaged. And the very fact, like in New York City, 11% of registered voters bother to vote. I don't know what the percentage is, but they're not nearly close to 100%.
Yeah.
And all of my Australian friends are like, you got to have mandatory voting. You have to you vote and you pay a fine. Right? There's some issues with that too, I think, but um, people just don't pay attention, and that lets all of these sleaze weasels just get away with all this money wasting nonsense. And then they
Yeah.
complain that stuff doesn't work. Well, did you vote? Well, I was busy. It does my head in. Truly does my head in. But um, we're celebrating. That's great. Forward focused. Um, what do you think? What do you think the biggest dangers are? Let me wrap it up with that. What do you think the biggest threats are to the Trump administration this time around?
Well, I mean, the biggest threat that's still outstanding right now is a potential Democrat majority in the House.
Yeah,
I think when you look at history, that it's very likely, even if the Republicans control the majority after all the votes are finally counted for the first 2 years, it's very likely it'll flip
yeah.
after the 2020, what would it be, 2026 midterms. Um, and so, immediately, unless cooler heads somehow manage to come into power in the Democratic Party, immediately
So, for
upon the
those who don't
swearing
know,
in of
David
that,
is going into a career as a stand-up comedian. But sorry, I
right,
interrupted.
no, but seriously, I mean, immediately on January 1st of 2027, when that Congress is sworn in, they will file impeachment. And
Yeah.
so that's just something you're going to have to assume is going to come about. So you got really 2 years to get a lot of good done, and then you're going to spend the second 2 years in a holding action against the constant effort to impeach the president.
Right.
And that's just
But
sad. That's an awful fact of life in
it is an
America.
awful fact. Here's a fun what if scenario, right? Trump is focused on correcting the nonsense in the country and moving us forward, right? Vance is an intensely capable man. So let's say 2 years happens, Democrats take it back. They file impeach, and he says, you know what? I'm tired. I'm 80. Thank you very much. It's been great. I retire. Vance is president. So
I've had that thought
There's
too.
no Vance derangement syndrome.
Yeah.
Right? So that's also a possibility. I also
Yeah,
it's
I
also down to
actually think that
performance.
is a possibility
Yeah,
too.
if
I
we
think
do
that's a
great
possibility.
things in the first 2 years, it's also a real possibility that the windbags who've been screaming Hitler, Nazi, blah, 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 will just they'll just look stupid, and the whole thing will just blow away
Yeah.
because
Well, and that's why I think it's vitally important for the Republicans in these next 2 years to ignore the legacy media.
yeah,
Stop doing those Sunday morning shows. They
yeah,
don't
ignore it,
matter.
don't
Nobody
care.
cares. Stop worrying about. In fact, if I was Trump, honest to God, if I was Trump on day one, from day one forward, I would instruct my press secretary. Maybe you let the New York Times, the Washington Post, and MSNBC and CNN into the briefing room, but I would ignore their representatives in the briefing room and never take a question from
Yeah,
any of them because they don't matter anymore.
it's
They're
true.
dead. And so you have to treat them with that level of contempt. And if the press corps, whoever they elect to be their leader, tries to insist, then I would cancel daily press briefings and
Yeah,
say
no need.
this is a waste of time and just, let Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson be the press briefings every day if they want to be.
Well,
Do
I
them in
think they
that
could make
format.
some time for the Blackmon show and the Messy Time show,
There you go.
and then let Rogan get a look in.
Yeah. Or do the press briefings on X every day. More people get their
Yeah,
news from X than any other source now anyway.
yeah,
That's what matters now.
yeah. That's
These
true.
media outlets, these are dead business models. They're propped up only because billionaires own them and are willing to lose money every year. Bezos is going to lose $80 million on the Washington Post this year. He's obviously getting tired of that.
Yeah. Well,
These
doesn't matter.
legacy
That's not
media
even a
doesn't
month's
matter.
fuel for his mega yacht, so he doesn't care.
Right, right.
He doesn't care at all.
Right. But but he's worried about his defense contracts. He's got a lot of government contracts he
Yeah,
needs to protect.
yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised to see him sell the Washington Post before January 1st. I really wouldn't.
yeah. Probably. Who needs it?
Yeah,
Well, everyone, it's still a joyous day. The fight is not over, but a major victory has been achieved. And David, thank you. It's been such a great pleasure getting to know you over the last couple of years, and we'll have
yes,
lots more
sir.
positive things to talk about as they unfold, which is great. And to all my listeners, as David has reminded you, and I always tell you, turn off the mainstream media who are lying to you, and tune into Messy Times.